Hey everybody, just popping in with a Make and Tell Tuesday video for you today. Today we're going to be using the Baby's Breath image from the Budding Beauties Spring set in a rather unique way. I always love those paintings that look like you're laying in the middle of a forest looking up at the trees, and we're going to do a fun take on that today using this Baby's Breath image to mimic the look of some blooming trees. So we're going to start off by watercoloring a panel of watercolor paper. I have just a really inexpensive panel of watercolor paper. This is a Hobby Lobby brand paper, which I really like for card making, for when you're doing these types of just really quick and simple and easy backgrounds. So I'm starting off by wetting this panel of paper with just plain water. So we're going to add some color with my watercolors. I'm using my Mission Gold watercolors, and we're going to create kind of a sky in the center, and then we're going to do some bright pinks and oranges around the edges to kind of mimic the look of blooming trees with the sky kind of peeking out in the center. So we'll start with some blues in the center, not a lot, just a little hint of sky coming through. Then I'm going to wash my brush, and we're going to move on to those outer edges where we're going to do some bright pinks and oranges. Just using a wet on wet technique and letting the colors blend. Now before we add our stamping, we need that to be completely dry, so I'm going to hit that with my heat gun and speed that along. So we're back and our panel is dry, but I do want to add just a little more interest with some more brush strokes over top of this while it's actually dry. So I'm going to just brush a little more color here and there now that it's dry, just to get some more layers of color. Alright, once again we need that to dry, so I'll hit that with my heat gun one more time, and then we'll be ready to do some stamping. So now we have this pretty panel that's all watercolored, and we can go ahead and add our stamping. So like I said at the beginning of the video, we're going to be using the Baby's Breath image from the Budding Beauties Spring set. I'm using some Forest Moss ink, and what we're going to do is we're going to stamp this all the way around the edge, just to kind of look like we're looking up through the trees in the opening of this blooming forest. So I'm going to angle them all so that they're all pointing towards the center. And I'm going to be stamping just this, the stem portion first, and then I'll go back and add the blooms with the second step of the baby's breath image. So the bases and trunks of our trees are all stamped and completely dry. I did hit that with my heat gun again because I was using Distress Oxide ink, which stays wet a little longer, and so in order to make sure that was nice and dry, I hit that with my heat gun so that I don't get embossing powder where I don't want it. So now I'm going to be taking the second step from that baby's breath image to stamp the blooms on our trees, and I'm going to be using my Misty for that so that it's a little bit easier to line everything up. I'll be stamping with Versamark ink and heat embossing with white powder. I'm pausing partway through my stamping to sprinkle on some embossing powder so that my Versamark ink doesn't dry before I get all the way around. Alright, so our stamping is all finished. I have it all coated with embossing powder, so I'm going to go heat that up with my heat gun. I'm back and our heat embossing is all finished, and you can see we have these beautiful blooming trees. It's just a whole forest of them, but I'm going to add a little bit more interest to our forest and to our trees. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the end of the baby's breath stem, this part, and I'm going to do some stamping in there almost to mimic the look of some different type of trees or twigs also kind of coming up out of our forest. To just fill in some areas and just make it a little more interesting. And then finally, to finish it off, I'm going to stamp a sentiment in the center. I'm stamping Sending Prayers, and this is from the Caring Cross set. And once again, I'm using Forest Moss Distress Oxide ink, and we'll just stamp that right in the center. And there you have it. You have a beautiful blooming forest. You could use this same concept for a more traditional forest by using one of our fir and foliage sets. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this Make and Tell Tuesday.